At the beginning of the Civil War, the North had one very distinct plan for defeating the South. They decided on a plan called the Anaconda Plan. So what the North wanted to do was use its military and its navy to blockade southern ports, not let any of those supplies in. And they knew that the South couldn't grow enough food to feed themselves, and that they didn't have enough manufacturing to produce the supplies necessary for war. And eventually, if the blockade went on long enough, they'd be able to just kind of starve out the South. The other element of this is to cut the Confederacy in half at the Mississippi River. Now, it takes until 1863, almost halfway through 1863, to accomplish that, but eventually that does happen. The last part is to try to take the capital of Richmond, which is in Virginia, not actually very far from Washington, D.C. By 1863, the blockade was fairly effective. Food prices had increased radically, people were starving. There was an effect based on the blockade. Now, the South's main advantage and the South's plan was based around trying to get Britain to recognize it, to ally with it, or at the very least, get Britain to help give supplies. Outside of that, it was just kind of the American strategy during the American Revolution: wait them out. The idea was that eventually the North would get tired of losing men and money by trying to take the South, and eventually they'd quit. So even though they did have advantages with the military leadership, the idea was that just keep the war going on, just keep it bloody enough that eventually the North would get sick of being there and they would just leave. Lincoln, for his part, politically holds the Union together, and at first it's by trying to preserve this abstract idea of union, that the South had no right to leave, that these were Americans, that they needed to stay in the country. Eventually he's going to change that, and one of the advantages that the North has is Lincoln's political leadership as well.